You're listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. Race 92 is a vintage-inspired racing apparel brand specializing in celebrating vintage race culture and adapting to motorsports today. Check out race92.com to see many different merchandise, shirts and sweatshirts and many different things that we offer. I'm your co-host, Aaron McAtee. Our other co-host, you may have seen him walking out of a Great Clips with a big old smile on his face. Obviously, he hasn't been to a Great Clips for a while. You've seen him at a dirt track. He is the man, the myth, the legend, Scott Bowie. How's it going, Scott?
Good, Aaron. What's going on, buddy?
Not much. Looking forward to the track opening here and later this week.
Yeah, a couple of days.
Yeah.
That's City of Indianapolis needs that right now, I think. It needs some normalcy to the city of Indianapolis, and race cars at the Speedway in May. That's normal.
And I think the sport in general, I think, needs it.
Yeah, I agree.
It's the greatest spectacle in racing and largest single day sporting event.
Yeah, it's going to be good to get it back. It's going to be good to see people come back to town. Mm-hmm. And it's good for the local people who can go to the track and kind of start doing their traditions again. It's good and it's needed right now for sure.
Absolutely. So this past weekend there wasn't too much racing news. Obviously, where there's a Formula One race, Lewis Hamilton won. Definitely no surprise there.
No, that seems you can almost write that in pen before the season starts.
And I think we're getting to the point where you can write in pen that Scott Dixon's going to win the IndyCar championship.
Boy, it sure looks like it, doesn't it? Although, man, he's got these young guys coming along. So, this 500, is the 500 still double points?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I know that there was some talk of not making double points. So if it's double points, this is going to be key probably to him winning another championship. I'd say it's going to be close this year. I think these guys are really going to push him, maybe like in no other year he's had, at least recent years.
Especially his teammate.
Yeah.
Palou.
Because you got Palou, Herta, Pato, just to name three young guys who are going to be very strong. And so I think this year he's going to be really tested, which is, I don't think he'd won it any other way, though.
Right.
I think his motto is, you're going to have to take it from me.
Oh, absolutely. So, I think that's always kind of been his motto, obviously. Excuse me. There's been several years where they weren't very competitive, but, as soon as, they were, I think it was right when they got back into Honda, I think 2006, he was extremely competitive again. Yeah.
So it's going to be good. And like I mentioned before, it's going to be good. The road course, the Penske Invitational road course race.
Willpower Grand Prix.
The Willpower Grand Prix. See how that goes. Again, a lot of young drivers could take that, though.
Man, I think Sam McLaughlin, I think this may be his race. I just have a good feeling about him.
Yeah, Scott's good. He's already ran second on an oval. I forget how he did it at the first two road races. I know it at St. Pete was not really his day.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what happened to him at Barber. I don't know if he got caught in that crash or if he finished. But, he's got a lot more laps since then. And he's got a lot more confidence. And, this is kind of a odd road course. It's not super technical. It's got some speed parts, and you got that, really quick right-hander at the end of the front straightaway. So it will be interesting to see how he does. But I would think that this one, like you were kind of alluding to, this could fall right into his hands. So it'll be interesting. It's going to be good. It's good to see. And I think, like I've said before, I think IndyCar's got it. They got some great talent there.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I think, the most competitive IndyCar's been in quite some time, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look at the names we're not talking about. Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Yeah,
Haven't really
kind of
talked
forgot about
about
that
him.
name.
I mean, there's obviously several others. It just, back to all the other Andretti cars, really, basically, besides Herta, you're not really hearing too much about. So, Hinch struggling a little bit, and so it's gonna be interesting. Of course, Hinch is pretty good at that road course too, though. So,
Yeah.
it'll be good. I'm really excited for it. It's hard to believe it's coming up so quick after it seemed like it took forever to get here.
Right. And someone else to watch is Jack Harvey. I tell you what, he's
Yes,
getting very competitive.
yes, Jack Harvey is. Yeah, and I know some people that live up on Carmel and that he's the guy's constantly working out and the guy's
Mhm.
constantly strength training and
He lost a lot of weight, I
yeah,
think,
lost a
from
ton of
yeah.
weight and I mean this guy's serious about what he's doing. So I think that I mean at some point that's going to pay off, right?
Mhm.
At some point he's going to get his, and at some point you got to believe at some point Alexander Rossi's going to turn this
Oh,
train
I
around.
would sure hope so. I would definitely think so.
He has had a rough go. I really feel, and this is probably not correct, and I'm sure anybody out there could correct me. I feel after that dominating win he had up at Elkhart Lake
Hmm.
a couple of years ago, it's just he's been hit and miss ever since. And they come down to that championship race and got the wing tore up immediately at the start, and just man, they just have not. They haven't looked in sync ever since.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, no, I mean, he's always competitive at Indy, so I think he's definitely someone to watch out for, definitely in the 500.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree with that.
So our interview today is the son of 1996 Indy 500 winner. He's the grandson of Bob Lazier. We're interviewing Flinn Lazier, and yeah, it was a great interview, and I definitely think everyone will enjoy it.
I agree. I didn't know much about Flynn. I did a little research on him before we did the episode. I try not to have a ton of information on some of these people I don't know about because I want them to tell their story versus me trying to lead them somewhere.
Right.
And I thought Flynn was it was really open and he was very honest about where he's at in his career, and it was pretty compelling that I felt that it was, and he really has some heartfelt moments discussing his grandfather.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's an interview a lot of people are going to be are going to enjoy, and I think some people may even be surprised just
Mhm.
um, if you don't know much about him or that sort of thing. So I'm really glad we did that one. It was an excellent interview, and he's a great guy, and I wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, definitely a lot of I would say heartfelt, emotional moments in there because obviously we lost Bob last year from COVID. So he was really just reflecting on him and everything that he's done for him and also his family. I mean, he started, as you'll find out from listening to the interview. I mean, he started multiple legacies for the family. Obviously, the racing legacy and also I guess you would say the ski resort, ski hotel legacy as well that they have in Colorado.
Yeah, and here again, and this has been a theme. I feel like, especially with some of the older people we've either talked to or discussed,
Mhm.
uh, people with can-do attitudes and people who are just like, "Oh, I can do that. I'm going to do that." So I think it really just speaks to a mindset and uh, a thought process
Right.
that not only are they successful in business, but they're successful as people as well.
Right.
And so I really hope other people enjoy it as much as I did. So yeah, I'm excited to introduce this one.
So our guest tonight is currently running in the Indy Pro 2000 Championship with Legacy Autosport. He worked through the ranks of the SCCA National Championship and is the son of 1996 Indy 500 winner Buddy Lazier. We are joined by Flinn Lazier. Hey Flynn, how's it going?
Good. Going well. How are you guys?
Doing great. How you doing, Flynn?
Good.
Yes.
Got back from St. Petersburg a few days ago and decompressing at home now. Have a little bit of time off.
And home for you in Colorado, right?
Yep. I'm in Denver right now. I'm from Vail, but I spent some time in Denver. It's a lot closer to the airport, so it's easier for me to go back and forth from there. But I'm still a resident in Vail. I still spend a lot of time up in the mountains. But yeah, it's nice being here for travel.
You ran first two races already, right? So you ran Barber and St. Pete.
Yep, we ran both.
You ran. I believe I looked. Did you run 12th in both?
I think we had a P9 finish in Barber, which is really positive. Based on where we were, we struggled super hard coming into that weekend, and then we had a P11 and P12 finish in St. Petersburg. So yeah, we had a lot of work to do, starting from the little amount of data and information we had, competing against teams that have been in the championship for several years now, and us being a team that's brand new this year. There's a lot of development and things we have to learn, but it's cool. It's a positive thing. It's good for me. Coming from Atlantics and my background, there's so many things you can change. And like any car, there's little things that a lot of cars respond to that other cars don't. And those are things that we're trying to learn now, whereas a lot of the teams already have that data. So, yeah, they're positive finishes for what we had, I thought. And I think as the season progresses, we'll have that information. We'll be a lot more further up towards the front.
Well, you picked up spots in all three races, right?
Yes.
Yeah, you were plus on those spots. So, I mean, that's great. And you said it's a new team. Legacy started, was it last year?
Mm-hmm. Yep, they ran two races last year. They ran at Lucas Oil, and they actually won at Lucas Oil. And then they ran Gateway, and I think they had a few mechanical issues with Cody Swanson. But, yeah, they're really successful. Kent Boyer engineered their oval program, and I think Cody had a huge advantage over the field being a short oval racer as well. I mean, so much different experience, especially for a short oval, of similar to Lucas Oil. But yeah.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to watch Cody race. I come from more of an open wheel midget sprint car background, so I've been lucky enough to watch Cody race. You know, he's so good, and then we're kind of talking. The legacy. It's truly a legacy, much like your family. They're basically 4 generations now, and you are your 3rd generation racer, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, that's really great. Do you because you were out in Vail and out in Colorado and that, I mean, what kind of training do you do? Is it more running? Is it mountain biking? Is it?
It'll be a lot of different things. During the winter season, for off season, I ski a lot. I grew up skiing competitively when I was a kid, along with go-karting. And it's actually really good cardio. A lot of people don't realize, but it's amazing cardio. In Vail, we're at about, on top of the mountains where we ski, it's about 10,000 feet. So the air is quite thin. It's really good training, ski-wise, as long as you keep in moderation. Don't get hurt. But otherwise, I mean, with my dad's experience, 20 years, I have a fair list of little things I do to get prepared for the season. I'd say unbiasedly, we show up very good in that department. My dad was a bodybuilder for a few years in his college days, so he took it very seriously, especially fitness-wise. And the cars back then, the old kart cars and the old Indy cars they had back in the day were much more challenging to drive than I'd say they are now. Both without powered steering, but I just consider those cars in the 90s a lot more raw.
They were animals. Those things are straight up animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially back in the Buick V8 days.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's insane. I mean, especially the stories he'll tell me. He always tells me this story. Enzo Fittipaldi's racing with us this year in the Pro 2000 Championship, and my dad raced with his grandfather for a brief period of time, and he talked about it's something I have to ask Enzo, but he always talks about how he had this acid that he would basically dunk his hands in, and it would make the skin on his hands a lot rougher, because back then it was a sequential box. And I mean, they would come out of like things like the Detroit Grand Prix with bloody hands.
Oh wow.
And obviously that's a very physically challenging race as well, but just everything was a lot more brute in my opinion. So I've been lucky enough to pick up on all his little tips and tricks, and physically I'd say I always am. That's where I have an advantage on the field a lot of the time, is because I've had time to have a lot of the resources that the U.S. ski team has here. The high altitude's great, and it's just something I've always taken very seriously. And I think it's great that other drivers are taking it a lot more seriously now than they did back in the day, because it helps reduce injury and a lot of other things as well. But yeah, I do a lot of things. I'd say the skiing's the best, but otherwise, a lot of it's just in the gym, and the rest is little forearm things, neck things, nothing too foreign.
And your family is hooked up with a ski resort in Vail, right?
Yeah, we're from we don't have any affiliation with the resort, but our family business is here. It's the Tivoli Lodge in Vail, and yeah, my grandfather was he was an orphan when he grew up in Minnesota, and he was orphaned until he was 18 years old. So he wasn't picked up by anyone until he was 18. And when he was picked up, he picked up skiing in Minnesota, and he ended up going for college for a short period of time. But a ski bum was his biggest thing, and he ski bummed around the country, and he ended up in Vail eventually. And then once he got to Vail, that was his stopping point. And he was an entrepreneur. He was a bartender for a short period of time, and then took that money and used it to build. He's a huge builder, even to the day he passed. He was building, and he ended up starting one hotel, sold that hotel, and then got an opportunity to buy a really good location right on the mountain, which is where we are now. And that was started in 1969, and it's something he's always been a part of. And it was rebuilt in 2007, and it's still a family thing. My mom is the manager of the hotel. My dad is also another managing entity of the hotel, but also does the revenue maximization part of the hotel, and that's what they spend all their time on. I got my degree in marketing, so I'm helping the hotel with some of the advertising stuff, getting involved in whatever way I can. So yeah, it's a family thing. But yeah, we all grew up skiing, but it's just the hotel. Nothing with Vail Resorts, but yeah, it's a great resort as well.
So your grandfather, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So your grandfather, so did he really start the racing legacy within your family?
Oh yeah, 100%. He was very prominent in Super V. He ran, let's see, what else? Back in the day, it was Super V. He ran a lot of Formula Vs. Formula B was a big thing in SCCA racing at the time. He was an SCCA racer for a large period of time, and then he was at the time, I don't know what they would call it. I don't know if they'd call him a Mazda factory driver, but he drove for Mazda and won the Daytona the Daytona 24-hour 3 times for Mazda.
Oh wow!
Back in the day, so getting affiliation with Mazda, but yeah, not a lot of people know about that. But yeah, he's the one who got my dad into racing, my uncle in racing as well. I don't know how you fund two kids. I mean, back in the day, it was a lot different, but we always joke because my sister's a talented dancer, and that's her passion. I'm grateful I don't have a brother of sorts, because it's so hard to do it as it is these days. But yeah, he really was, and he was an amazing entrepreneur. He had an extreme passion for racing. He was really an idol for a lot of people that he met, and
absolutely.
After his passing, which was almost it was a little over a year ago now, and being back in the IndyCar paddock, which has been great. I've heard a lot of people come up to me and say they miss. They used to call him. I think they called him the smile walking down the pad, or they called him Smiley. It was something like that. But he had this huge smile, especially at the racetrack, and it was cool hearing some stories about that over the past few weeks, because it's been a while since we've been with IndyCar family again, and
right.
Yeah, it was something we missed. And
what drew him to racing?
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Like, how does a ski bum, like you called him, get interested in racing?
I think so. When I think he showed me this picture, and I wish I was home right now because I would have it, because they still have this picture. But he was really into building originally, and he still was into building buildings. But back in the day, I think he got into building race cars. So when he was like 19, his mom and his dad bought him all the materials he needed to make like a soap car. And he has this picture of him and his dog. He was also a huge dog lover. We still have, I don't know if you guys noticed the logo of the dog on the hat for the hotel. He loved, he had his black lab when he was a kid named Rastus. And he always talked about this dog Rastus. And then we had a chocolate lab named Indy, in which was originally my parents' dog, but he ended up stealing that dog, I'll call it. And they were best friends, him and Indy, and then Indy passed. We had Speed, was our second dog. Him and Speed, same deal, became best friends, and they spent a bunch of time together. But he has this picture with his old dog Rastus and this little soap cart he built, and I think it really started with that. I think he built one, and then I don't really know. I wish I would have asked him, but I probably asked my grandmother how I got into racing, but I'm not really sure where it stemmed from. If I were to say the exact roots, I would have to say it was that picture of that wooden soap car that he built. But that's what I would think. But I don't have a precise answer on exactly where it came from.
And your dog has an Instagram, right?
Yeah, I think now
because I came across it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think it's Racer now. Yeah, it's Racer Lazier, because we have. It would be my family's, or since I've been around, it's the third chocolate lab we've had, and it's Racer Lazier on Instagram. It's also Speed's old Instagram. But yeah, we call him the mascot for the hotel. A lot of people that come to the hotel request to see the dog, and he hangs out in the lobby, so he can say hi to all the guests and everything. And yeah, he's the hotel mascot. And he hangs around he's gotten really good with it. And Speed did the same thing. He greets the guests and hangs out, and we have to make sure they're really personable dogs.
That's awesome.
He's great. He's full of personality, but yeah, he's a good dog.
Yeah, as soon as the dog's there and it's a good dog, man, everybody just falls in love with him, right?
Yeah.
I remember I went to a bed and breakfast, man. This is probably 15, 20 years ago. And they had like a big Mastiff, some kind, and man, he'd just walk around. He'd let everybody pet him, and people just loved that dog. And just, that was kind of the dog's job. He just went around, like you said, and greeted the guests. So, it makes it very memorable. Like, hey, that's the place with the dog. That's really cool.
Yeah, it is. And I think you bring up the point of memorable or something that really sticks in someone's mind. That always reminds me of my grandfather. He was someone it would be hard to talk to him and not remember your conversation with him. But yeah, he loved dogs, and anyone who would come into the hotel and not like the dog, he would say, well, you can leave. But yeah, he was a huge lover of dogs, and he was a lover of racing as well. So
obviously we know how you got interested in racing, but when was the first time where you knew that you wanted to be a race car driver?
I don't even know if there really was a first time. It was almost like I was born, and when I was so a part of racing that when I was born, it was, I don't even know if there was like ever a question of whether or not I wanted to do it. I kind of just was born that way, and that's what it was, I guess. A month after I was born in April, and the next month I was in Indianapolis for the whole month of May. And we talked about this recently, because back in those days, the month of May really was like the month of May. I mean, there was no, now you have a limited amount of testing, and, there's a few weekends where they get going. You know, it more is, you know, they keep it kind of the month of May because they have the Indy Grand Prix. So it keeps it more like the month of May for fans. But back in the day, a lot of people don't know, but I mean, it was literally, I mean, the whole month of May, there was an Indy car on track at the Speedway for the whole month. And so from the month I was born, I was there the whole month of May, you know, like only a few weeks old, I was there all the way up until I'd say probably when I was like 7 years old. Every year I was, and I missed several years of school. I think I missed a lot of kindergarten, a lot of first and second grade because I was always traveling with my family to races. So I always had like my racing friends, which was like I remember the times like Scott Goodyear's son, Scott Sharp's son. I think some of the Unser, I think Lonnie maybe might have been Johnny's daughter, but there was a lot of kids that were in the same boat. And yeah, it was just, I spent so much time at the racetrack back in the day. It was always something I wanted to do, but when it came time to actually going to the track, which was karting at the time, it was something I begged my dad to take me to do, but it was so difficult for some reason. And I don't know what it was, but I was around 5 or 6 years old. And I think my mom got so fed up with me asking him, she finally ended up just taking me because my dad, I don't know what it was. And, you know, I don't know if he didn't want me to get involved because at the time, I mean, the mortality rate was quite high during those days, or if it was something where he wanted me to just take time to see if I was interested. But my mom ended up taking me for like the first 2 years. My dad wasn't even really around all that much. And yeah, it was really my mom, my grandmother would come with me, and we started racing here in Colorado. And it was no different than being at the track. It's always something I've really enjoyed doing. And then once things started to get a little more serious, we started racing karts nationally in SCUSA and around the country. That's when my dad started to get a little more involved, and we got pretty serious karting wise, and that was a blast. And then I think we took like a year or two off, and that was like the next phase of like, hey dad, like please take me to like the racetrack. I mean, we're talking like the racetrack now,
right?
You know, because I'm hearing about all these V days and this and that, and that's when my granddad really stepped in, because that was something he was he knew a lot about, were the Formula Vs. So that's when my granddad and I started spending a lot more time together, was going down to the track. We ended up working on the Formula V that my uncle won the national championship in '96, which is the same Formula V we have now. And we fixed it up and we ran it. And it was kind of one of those things where we got going again. My dad started to get a little more involved into the program. And then we ran. That's when everything really started, was with V's. And I want to say 14 or 15, 2014 or 15. And we went up from there. We ended up, he bought me my first race car, which was it's a Vortec Formula V. It is undisputedly probably the fastest Formula V in the country. It's good. The Formula Vs are interesting because you either stumble across a really good motor, and there's all these little tricks and everything you have, just like anything else. And they're so slick. I mean, they're only, I think they're only like 50 something horsepower, and we have a really quick Formula V. So it'd be cool to go Formula V racing again soon. But yeah, it's been a cool family journey, no doubt. My dad's, I'm not saying that my dad hasn't been involved in it, but there was definitely a lot of hesitation getting me involved. But I'm so grateful for people like my mom, my grandfather, because I don't even know if I would have been able to start if it wasn't for them. So there's also a lot of racing on my mom's side as well. So it's something she's kind of familiar with as well.
That now let me ask you, so even though you were younger, do you think that and I'm not saying your mom couldn't help you. You said your mom was come from a racing background, and but do you think that being there, even though at that young age and you were without your dad, and you kind of maybe had to figure it out a little more on your own without the tips and tricks, do you think that ultimately in the long run helped you?
I mean, maybe a little bit. I think maybe he wanted me to go along and see if it was something I was truly interested in, not just doing it because my dad or whatever, and whatever his reasons might be. But that kind of goes along with the question that I get asked quite a bit, which is how much he coaches me. And the answer has always been, originally I told people all the time that he's never really actually coached me. in the manner that you would think he was, but really he did quite a bit once we started actually going out. He had his own go-kart, and he taught me a lot, non-verbally, I'd say. So yes, I would say some of it I had to figure out, but once we started getting serious and I started to get to the point where I needed to understand fundamentals, he taught me a lot of that visually, and more of in a playful environment where we'd actually get to do it hands-on. And in my opinion, I'm a college student. I've dug deep into how people learn better, and a lot of people are really good visual learners, and some learn better through books. And everyone has their own learning style where they really progress, and I've always been a visual learner, and I'd say that was kind of his way of teaching me, was more visually going back. We have 2 Formula Vs and we race in Formula Vs together, whatever it is. And he's also been a big help back in his day. Engineering was something that he's picked up a lot of knowledge in, so that's something he's taught me a lot in as well. But yeah, I'd say that a little bit was figuring out on my own, but I think a lot of it was maybe him making sure I developed an interest in it without any push from him, which I think was nice. And it was also a good way to develop more of a relationship with my mom in terms of the racing stuff. But yeah, no, it's cool. I tell people now it's getting to the point where I travel with him less and less, and I'm starting to miss that a lot, because family and racing are big for me. And without Bob being around, sometimes it's just me at the track. And yeah, no, it's nice, but I'm really grateful for sure.
Yeah, I come from a racing family as well. I went to my first, like I said, we more open well. I was born in '69, and I went to my first race 4 weeks later, and USAC sprint race, and I know what you mean. Like, my parents are to the age where they can't really go anymore, and so they can't travel and they can't go to the races as much, and it is different. It is. If you grew up around that, with that family environment, it's a different feeling at first. It's something you gotta get used to.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize, but racing is such a family-oriented thing sometimes. Yeah. And it's something that a lot of people share with their parents, their brothers and their sisters. And if you look at the people that go to the Speedway, a lot of them are people that have lived around or lived in Indianapolis for their whole life, and they've been, they grew up with their parents. They take them every year, and motorsports oftentimes something that's shared with family. And I'd say even within the motorsports community is really a big family. I'd say anyone that is interested in or has been to any sort of racing event can connect with each other on a very almost family-like level, because it's just the community is different that way. It's a very strong community, and the people are very passionate about what they love.
And I know for me, I've been around racing pretty much my whole life, but definitely from a different perspective of you and even Scott, to where I was purely just a fan. Like, I always tell people, I was born in 1992. I always tell people that I was at the 1992 Indy 500 because my mom was pregnant with me. So, ever since I was 5 or 6, my dad always took me out to the track. At first, I wasn't really big into it. I always wanted to leave, but then it got to the point where I wanted to stay longer than him. And it's been like that for, 15 years. And, that's part of the reason why we're doing this podcast. I just wanted to kind of get more involved with racing. That's why I started the Race 92 brand with a friend, was to really, just kind of like get a taste of that other side as much as I can. And just, like I said, it's really a passion. And like you said, you can't really, once it gets kind of in your blood, you can't really get rid of it.
Yeah, I raced with my brother ran he ran sprint cars, ran midgets and Silver Crown cars, and then later on we had a speed shop, and I worked with a bunch of other people, and just working with a mechanical, setup, stuff like that. And it was more of a job, when you did with your brother. It was a completely different atmosphere than when you do it with someone else. It becomes more like a job, even though you're friendly with the people. There's just something about that family aspect. So I really understand what you're saying.
Yeah, no doubt. There's something about it that's just special.
Yeah, it really is.
It's hard. It's harder to enjoy it without them. But yeah, there's something about it that always lives in them too. You know. So
racer kids, all kind of kids who grew up racing, they kind of always. Like you said, it's almost like a fraternity in a way, because you have a lot of the same backgrounds in terms of the traveling and just all those types of things, you know, and then traveling across the country and just all that. So yeah, no, I didn't get exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, we're all a bit of a different breed.
Yeah,
in our own special way, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's truth there.
But no, I really do believe it brings everyone together. I think it's a very collaborative and bringing together sport for sure.
So everybody, you know, come out of St. Pete, everybody's just talking about how hot it was. And like for you, where did that rank? I mean, was that you run in the morning? Was it as bad or?
No, it's an interesting point you bring up, and it was interesting because it actually wasn't that hot during the day, but I did see several IndyCar drivers complaining about it. And I will say we raced around the same time that they did, but on Saturday it was around noon. And I will say during the race it was not the hottest I've been, but once we cooled down and we were in the pits, it was probably the hottest I've been in a race car as well. Even though considering it wasn't, I mean, it was probably only 80 degrees, even just standing there. I really couldn't tell you what it was. I think maybe a part of it was the humidity. You know, I've been there several times where it's been humid. I've also been in a situation where I've been in much better shape. I was recovering from a few broken bones in the off season, so I didn't have as much time to train. But yeah, I would totally vouch. I mean, IndyCar, totally different deal. I know some people were deciding to run vents and some weren't. If I were in that case, I would undoubtedly run a vent. I mean, it's just at the end of the race, it's mental clarity, and it's going to be more blood to the head as well. So, yeah, no, that's what I heard, and I could definitely say that Saturday cooling off, I was surprised. It was definitely ranking in the top 2 or 3 hottest experience I've had in the car, no doubt.
And you guys race at Indy in a few weeks, right? So you race the weekend of the road course, right? So like May 15th, I think it is.
Yep.
Is that your first time racing in Indy?
No, I've actually been to the street course circuits there. I think a total of I've raced there a total of 4 times. I think 3 or 4 times, and then I've tested there once. So I'm familiar with that track for sure. Very, very special place. It's cool to be racing there in any configuration. So,
right. So that kind of leads me into another question. What does Indy mean to you and your family? Obviously, I mean, your dad obviously won the 1996 Indy 500, but there towards the latter part of his career, he fielded a car that he owned for his last what was like 3 or 4 years at least. So obviously, he was very passionate about it to where he wanted it to, field his own car. So what does it mean really to your family?
I think for us, it's kind of like a second home. I mean, it's every time I show up to that place, it really, that's the only place, way I can describe it. It's kind of like a second home.
Right.
And I tell people this, a lot of times it's just an unexplainable place. I mean, to be in a place that holds over 250,000 spectators in one period of time, and the magnitude of the place is just it's unexplainable unless you've been there really. But it's just special, I think, to all of us. I think for my dad, it's more of a home. I mean, back in his day, I'd argue out of the living drivers today, he has some of the most track time there because he lived in the peak time of the tire war and back when they had unlimited testing days. I mean, he spent a lot of time there. And I'd say out of people that I'd say he has a few more years in him if he did want to run again. Out of the people that could run the 500, he has the most miles at that track. So I call it a second home for me, a 1.5, if not home for him. And overall, just a really special place for all of us, I'd say.
When you, I mean, so obviously you were at the Speedway numerous times before you ever got strapped in. Was there, I mean, of course, race car drivers are known for their focus. What was that like? I mean, were you able to kind of block out where you were and just roll on track and start burning laps, or first few go arounds, was it just kind of taking it in?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because it definitely was taking it in because it was just so cool. But what was interesting about it was the first time I raced at the Speedway was I believe it was in US F4. It was right after SCCA Pro had formed US F4. And we had been we already did a test long before the race, but we were talking to a team about putting a deal together. And we just found two sponsors. One was a local restaurant in Indianapolis, and the other one was a hot sauce manufacturer in Indianapolis as well. And we just got it done probably like a day or two before testing had started. And we had to get the insurance figured out because they needed a crash damage budget, whatever. But we didn't have enough for the crash damage budget. So we ended up finally getting the insurance together. Like, I think it was like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, the night before the first test. And they're like, all right, we're good to go. We'll see the track. You know, they're leaving their shop then that night. And we found a flight out, whatever. We got in Indianapolis at probably like 4 or 5 in the morning. And we were on track, I think, at 8 a.m. And so it was very quick for me. But it was, I remember how excited I was because, it was one thing to be driving there to watch my dad or to be watching the 500, whatever it was. But for me to be actually getting in at that track was special for sure. And I feel the same way about the oval configuration. You know, I'm really hoping that when and if we do get that chance, it's going to be a similar feeling, if not multiplied by quite a bit more. But yeah, no, it's an amazing place, no doubt.
You just mentioned that, and I was getting ready to say that when you get your chance to run, you know, the 2.5, it's they always talk about of course they always talk about, you know, it's different on practice days versus race day, but you know, going into one the first few times and how you just kind of think there's no way, you know, because you just run down the front straightaway and it looks so narrow, you know, as they say, and then you got to turn it in, you know. It's just I imagine for somebody whose father was a winner there, I mean that moment, those first few moments would probably be pretty special as well.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. I think for anyone it'd be really special. But yeah,
sure.
No, have you guys been in person? Have you guys stood at the straightaway and looked into turn one before?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy to think. Really, I think just standing there, and I'm always someone, I've never really liked track walks because the way that things look prospectively when you're standing there compared to when you're at speed is completely different. I mean, you can never picture it either way. But really just standing there and looking at it, and especially for the little amount of banking that is there, it's really interesting to think about. Wow, it's hard to believe that they go in that quickly, flat out, at a place that narrow and without as little banking as they have. So I've had the same thought, no doubt.
And just think of, you know, like you said, like just all the history. I mean, even further back, you know, way before your dad's time. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Just think of all the, you know, some of the greatest race car drivers of all time, the race there. And it's just, I mean, you definitely would have to find a way to, you know, focus and be able to kind of block that out, because it'd be easy for it to kind of get to you. But I'm sure, you know, once you put the visor down and you start the car, you know, that you're good at kind of just blocking that out, and it feels like any other race.
Yeah, I think for anyone it's going to be hard to block out that you're at the biggest spectacle in sports history. But yeah, no, I mean, you're talking about the crazy days. I mean, I couldn't even imagine back in later in those days what it even looked like. But yeah.
But you know, it of course, you know, the team you're driving for, you know, Louis, you know, is the patriarch of the family and first 3-time winner, and then you of course, your dad's won. What was the first year he ran the Speedway?
The first year my dad ran at the Speedway, it might have been 91 or 92.
So he'd run there 4 or 5 years. So he'd
But they were a personal entry at the time. It was my dad won at the time. I think it was Can-Am. He was running Can-Am. He won the Can-Am championship, and he ended up using that money to buy. I think it was a Lola back then, or Renard. I'm not entirely sure, but they ran as a individual entry. And I don't think he qualified until 93 or 94.
Oh, okay. So but he'd been there, and of course, your family, your total family history in racing, and then you've so by then he's already got, before he wins the race, he's got a little bit of the feel of it, right? He's had the ups and the downs and all that. So I'm sure it made it feel so special when he finally won it. And I just have to believe that what's funny is those guys, and you've heard Kanan say it, I've heard Franchitti say it, Rossi says it, you feel about it one way before you win it.
Mm-hmm.
But then after you win it, it's even so much more special.
It changes your life. That's the thing I always hear people say. It changes your life. And I feel like in a way, racing the Indy 500 would probably change your life in some aspect.
I always think that's such a interesting perspective. And I'm, obviously I can't speak for your father, but I would imagine he probably feels the same way. It just, how much that means to him, to be able to come back and do it and chase it, when he was, continue trying to chase it.
And he won the race with a broken back, which I think is unbelievable. Unbelievable to think about.
Where did he get hurt? Phoenix or somewhere like that? Or
yeah, he had a rear wing failure at Phoenix.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
One of my favorite videos. Sorry, Flynn. Go ahead.
No worries. I was going to say, I think the G number for his accident was one of the highest at the time. They've had much higher now, but I think it was around 96 or 98 Gs that he pulled.
And then
he was very lucky.
And they showed during the yellows, I'm sure you've seen the video of him stretching and trying to loosen up, and I don't know how much pain he was in. I assume he was in some pain or at least discomfort. And
oh yeah.
So that I'm sure that just probably meant so much to him to win it, but that. So as you're chasing this, and obviously that's your ultimate goal, what, is it a thing where you're just paying attention to what's in front of you today, but that's always just out there, and it's out there, and that's what your goal is, but you're just so focused on today? Is that how you got to approach that?
I think so, yeah. As everyone knows, racing's such a financially bounded sport. Unfortunately, it's just it's how it goes. It's the geometry of how everything is set up, and there's many different theories of how it could go, and I think some of them are good ideas. But at the end of the day, it really is just the unfortunate fact of how things work.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I'd say it definitely is working on just what we can do today. Day to day, it's reaching out to potential partners, what that could look like, and really just getting ready for the next race. We're still not secured for the full season yet this year, and we're still looking for that. So every day is kind of a new challenge for me to be able to think of new ways, new people that might be interested in the program or might be interested in the next level of racing. Obviously, there's a lot more value for someone like that at the upper level, but yeah. I think for anyone to reach that level of sports, or especially that level of magnitude of racing, it's so hard to think of how you're going to get there.
All right.
With the amount of obstacles that seem apparent. And I'd say that was the same for my dad. My dad came from a very untraditional background, as do I. To what most of the drivers had at the time. But I think something that my grandfather taught us all is that, he had the passion for it. He had the will to do things that other people might have not had the will to do. And, they made the most out of what they had, and I think they did really take it day by day. And if you're lucky enough, you get there. But yeah, it's really hard to keep in perspective something of that magnitude to seem feasible every day.
Right.
Definitely.
And you were talking about the just doing it as a family as part of it. So would you say, the several years that your dad fielded his own car, I'm guessing most of your family was probably involved in that operation, right? So I would guess because a lot of it was that, not only was he racing in Indy, but he was, doing it with his family.
Yeah, definitely. It was so fueled by my grandfather, that program was.
Right.
And, my dad was obviously a part of running it as well, but it was very fueled by my grandfather.
Now, you said you got a marketing degree, or you went for marketing, and you're using it to help with the hotel, and obviously I'm sure you're using it to help with your racing. Like if you were talking to a younger you, and you said, what can I do to help my visibility? What can I do to try to, be seen more? I mean, would you recommend like communications courses or marketing or that type of thing? Or
that's hard. If I were to, the way you're saying it, I would almost say don't go to school,
right?
In terms of the racing stuff, because racing is such its own little thing. And honestly, I mean, a lot of the guys that I grew up with racing with are quite a bit further than me, because not necessarily because they've had the time to, make the money up themselves. They were already financially fortunate, but if I wasn't in school, I'd probably have some more time for racing. So in that case, I'd probably say just don't go. But
that's fair
it's
too.
hard to say. I'd say college-wise, it's really, some of it is applicable to real life. I'd say a lot of it you pick up is really the people skills and learning how to get really good at making friends, getting really good at communicate someone, getting really good with how to read someone, read situations, read a room. Things like that are really important. Situations that aren't necessarily from classes or stuff like that, because honestly, that I'd say 98% of that's unapplicable to racing and really just day-to-day life as well. But I'd say the lessons I picked up were really good in terms of people skills, no doubt, because that's stuff I bring today, and I'd say is something where I excel as well, because I mean, you see a lot of people in racing. Colton Herta, a good friend of mine when we were karting, spent a lot of time together, similar family backgrounds, which is, I think, why maybe we got along. It's been a long time since I've had an actual conversation with someone like him, but and not to put him down or anything, this is putting him up, but I don't know if anyone really understood, and I'm sure they did because it was pretty blatant, but if you guys ever noticed, like his interview skills when he first started in IndyCar, or maybe Indy Lights, I mean, it was rough. It was like, I'd say I had a hard time listening to a Colton Herta interview at the time. This weekend finishes St. Pete, you get a lot of Colton Herta media. I mean, Colton Herta is almost everywhere, and it's just crazy how much he's, where he started from to where he is now. It's really impressive, but that's someone who lived in Europe for a certain amount of time. I want to say Asia as well for a little bit. And really, unlike me, where he was able to continue racing, I still continued racing, but a little less. But it was more in a college manner. But he never really had that chance to, I think, improve his people skills. Whereas that was something that he developed probably most likely with his relationship with Steinbrenner, and now his relationship with Andretti. But yeah, I think that's something you miss out on. If I were to tell myself something when I was younger, it's really hard to say. I'd say we've really kind of done everything that we could have at the time. There's maybe a few racing deals that I would have said pick up on, but every opportunity I've got, I've had the chance to take. We've taken, and we continue to work on it. So if I were to say anything, I'd just say never stop believing in the process, because even now it's still believing in the process, right. And it can get frustrating at times being in a situation with ours where we're not financially fortunate to always be racing exactly what we want, how we want. It's just not an option for us at this time. It's just to be confident and be reliant in the people around you and right. The process, the slow and long process of building yourself and eventually getting a break or an opportunity.
So talking about Colton Herta, so obviously his dad now is his race strategist, and it's actually funny because after he won St. Pete, they had the radio conversation with his dad, and his dad was telling him to wave at the fans and everything. So definitely like a dad moment there. But I mean, you think you could ever have a relationship like that, like with your dad, as far as like him being like heavily involved with your racing, like being a race strategist or something like that?
I don't know. I think that's why Brian stayed away from Colton for so long.
Right.
It's because of that. I think if I had my dad on the radio, it'd be a nightmare. I mean, I never even let him get close to any of the radios in the trailer. Neither does I. I think that something he realizes too is that,
Right.
as a parent, it's just not the same. I think in Colton and Brian's situation, is it got to the point where, Marco obviously stepped back, and I believe Brian did all the stuff for Marco, if I'm correct. So maybe that was an opening for him that he had, and maybe it was just something where they felt it was time. I would say, in my personal situation, if that were to be an actual situation, I think with time it would make sense. But I think instead of a race strategist like Brian is, my dad would be more like an engineer type. Because that's something where I'd say our relationship stems is a lot more in the engineering department. So that's something we still talk about quite a lot. He's very, very good in terms of engineering knowledge, because he had a lot of time with that. And I would say I would definitely take that opportunity to have him as either a primary engineer or something else, because he's the type of person where we're on the same page in terms of what the car is doing. We speak the same language, as you would call it. A lot of times it's hard getting to the same language with an engineer. But I would say in that case scenario, yes. If it was a spotter or a strategist, absolutely not. But an engineer, yes, I would take him.
Right. I think one of the funniest videos I ever saw of your dad was, and I talked to you about this, Flynn, on Instagram, was that 2001 Atlanta race where his wheel came off coming out of the pits. Yeah. You seen that, Scott?
I think so. I believe I have.
Yeah, he was a little surprised that the wheel came off.
Yeah, I'd say that'd be a very surprising moment. That you were talking a moment ago about racing. There is something to be said about fully selling out to the dream, right? I mean, where you fully commit to it, and maybe you have a timeline in your head where you say, hey, if I haven't made it by this time, then maybe I should back away from it. I mean, there's definitely something to be said about that, where you just say, okay, this is what we're doing. And of course, that works for some people, and some people it doesn't. It's like everything else, roll of the dice, right? I mean, so no, I fully understand what you were saying earlier though about that. But so you are. So you said that you're not fully committed for the whole year. So how many races are we looking at the moment? As we're
hoping to be at the month of May as well. I think we're going to probably do some testing before we go to the Grand Prix, but we're currently working on it. Indianapolis is a really good place to have the opportunity to raise money, so we're working on that currently.
Yeah, especially now that things are lifting a little bit and people can be around, you can network better and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no doubt. So, I mean, if we can have people at the track, which right now we will be with fans and everything, and having people around the program is really positive. So we're going to keep working on that. We're hoping to have the month of May, and then we'll just keep working from there.
Yeah, no, I don't even look at Rossi. Rossi didn't even have a full-time deal, right? The year he won the Speedway. That was
it's true.
Yeah.
That was a part-time deal, and he won, and I think he still missed a race or two, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he ended up doing the full season. Yeah, okay. But I think the sponsors were kind of because he only had Napa on for Indy only, I think.
Yeah, and then I think they came on for the next race too. I don't remember what race that was, but I think they come on for the next race.
Right. So you were talking about your marketing degree, Flynn. So kind of wrapping up. So I noticed you started a company within the past year or so. Is that correct?
Yes, that is right. Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit about?
Yeah, definitely. So with the college and everything, I mean, always, and kind of go with your last point, Scott. Racing is something that will, whether or not we have the money to race or not, it's always something that'll be a part of us. We'll always be trying to race. It's I'd say racing and skiing kind of go hand in hand that way. It's kind of, for me personally, it's the reason for living, no doubt. Especially the racing, and it'll always be around. But even with that, and as a racer, that's why it's, I'm fortunate to have the education that I did, because it's always good to have something to fall back on.
Right.
In case, we do have a bad year. Last year is a great example. I mean, last year was so hard for us to find anything in terms of, and last year was supposed to be a year where we were supposed to have a full year in Indy Lights. I mean, after we tested with Bilardi and had a really successful year in Atlantics, it was supposed to be my Indy Lights debut with Bilardi, and unfortunately, the owner had some health issues, and but the biggest thing was a lot of people that we had that were interested in a full season of lights no longer were, because of the financial complications that COVID brought. So last year was a very challenging year. Did everything that we could. I remember I got a call to run a Trans Am car in the middle of July, and oh my God, I was so excited. The whole flight there, I was, oh my God, I couldn't even explain it. I mean, it was like going racing for the first time again, in Road America. And, it was it was such a last minute put together deal. It didn't work out great, but it was still back to racing again. We ran some Atlantics and we did what we could. So even with the years like that, we'll still be back in years like this and start working on it again. But yeah, this Lazier Media is something that I brought, is something that's to do while I'm not focused on racing. And with the marketing degree, it's an e-commerce based service. We do a lot of stuff for businesses in terms of growing businesses online. Marketing is really turning into an online thing now, and our goal is just to sell their products, their services at a lower rate than they would have to with other advertisers, whether it be physical or any other way, and do it online, which can be a lot cheaper and a lot more effective than traditional forms of advertising. So it's a start right now. We're still working to build everything, but I think we have a lot of opportunity, especially in the Valley. Right now, we're really only local, but who knows? We'll see. It's I'd say I have a little bit of entrepreneur in me as well from my grandfather, and we're still working on some building projects in Vail, which I'm really excited about. It was something I was able to spend some time with him doing, and yeah, we're really excited for the buildings and other things, but otherwise we're just working to keep on racing. And I think as things start to go back to normal, or more normal, I'll say, not necessarily normal. I don't know when things will go back to more back to normal. The more we see people that are interested in racing and interested in being a part of a program, and I think Roger is going to bring a lot of really good opportunities, especially to the Speedway. And I think so far he's done a really great job. I think unfortunately a lot of it is out of his hands. I mean, the fans thing is, obviously someone like him wants to keep everyone safe. And he wants to still have them at the Speedway, but at the same time, it's also not, it's not always up to him, especially with the pandemic going on. So I think he did a phenomenal job getting with the city and still going to have fans this year. So I think it's an amazing feat. And I think as Roger continues on his path for evolving IndyCar, I think there'll be more opportunity as well, because I think there'll be a lot more viewership. I think it's on a upward growing pattern right now. So I think it's really great.
Yeah, and I think he understands the value of those feeder series, even though he really has never really owned feeder series cars. I think you hear him talk a little bit, and he understands that, these feeder series, like if it's Pro Lights or what you're running, and some of the others, you got to have that ecosystem, right, to bring it along and get those drivers and try to keep those sponsors and owners and all that, in that pond. And I was telling Aaron the other day, we were talking about, I said, it's nice to see, Roger's obviously a man I don't know, but we both live fairly close to Speedway, especially when we first bought the place. You would drive by there. I saw him one day out it was raining pretty good. He and Doug and them were out, and he was pointing at him, telling him what changes he wanted to make on some signs, I believe, above the tunnel, and I think they've repainted it and done all that. And I told Aaron, I said, it's nice to see, at least Roger gets to see his baby walk a little bit, because he bought it and he's put all this time and love and care into it. And he's really made a lot of changes. And then last year, nobody really got to enjoy it. And this year, at least fans are going to be able to come out and enjoy it. And it's going to be nice. And I think once we can get back more to the fuller, race crowd next year, hopefully, I think it's going to be although it's always a great atmosphere, I think it'll be even more enhanced because he's so hands-on.
Oh, yeah.
And Doug is too, right? I mean,
yeah.
So it's just I'm really excited for that future as well. Kind of like you're saying that, and like right now, I guess the TV contracts must be coming up, something like that. I see NBC's kind of waffling a little bit, and all of a sudden ABC's saying, "Hey, maybe we're interested." Or is it CBS? Is it CBS or ABC? CBS, I think, right? And I think they're saying that
I'm not sure.
I think it's CBS. Could be wrong. One of the two. But, and they seem to be interested. And I think that probably has a little bit to do with the power of Roger as well. And I think 5 years from now, it's going to be interesting to see where we're all at, and where the sport is.
Yeah, I think so too. I think hopefully it's all positive. And I think with Roger in there, it's going to be a higher chance of being positive.
I agree, and I think, and I say this not as a slight. I think with his age, I think there might even be a little more urgency.
I totally agree, no doubt.
I think he's wanting to see this through.
Yeah,
as Roger likes to do.
Yeah.
So.
And from what I believe, I think his family's starting to show some interest in it as well. So hopefully, even when his time is over, it's passed on. Similar to the George family. I think Tony George did a really good job of passing the torch to someone who really deserves it. And I think Roger's going to spend some time to make sure that it's passed on similarly, like it was to him.
I agree, and I don't think there was anybody else in the country that could have really taken this on with the reverence that it deserves.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think he has a lot of progressive ideas as well. So I think it's a big step forward. I think it sounds like he wants to get Formula One a little more involved as well. So I think it's all positive. I think he's a great person to be in that position.
I definitely think it was unfortunate for him when he got the track, just going into the pandemic. But I definitely think that the track is in the best of hands, being under his ownership, because it makes you wonder, under the Holman George family, because there were rumors that they were going to sell it to different people. It really scares you to think what could have happened. So definitely, I think it ended up in the right person's hands.
I absolutely agree. We were talking to Jagger Jones. Jagger did our first podcast, and we were talking about Parnelli. And I said I've been around Parnelli a little bit, and I said to him, the one thing about Parnelli is he's still, the way he thinks is relevant to the sport. He still thinks as like a young man like yourself would think about driving in the sport. And I think that's the same thing you say about Roger. Roger's thinking is relevant. It's not in the past, or it's not caught in a certain way of thinking. He just had, he's always progressive, and his race teams have always been progressive, right? And I think that's, like, again, just kind of finish this off. I think that's the best thing about what we can feel the future of the sport holds. I think that's one reason why IndyCar just seems like it has such a bright future. And if IndyCar has a bright future, Indy Lights has a bright future, Pro 2000 has a bright future, and somebody like yourself has a bright future.
Scott, you want to close out with your racer to racer question?
Yeah, absolutely. So on Racer to Racer, one of the things that we like to give our guests a chance to do, and this is a question that anybody can answer. And like I said, it can be anybody. Some people, it's obviously going to be their parents or whomever, but we want to give them a chance to talk about somebody in the sport, be it a driver or someone who influenced you, or somebody like the effect that they had on you, like somebody you can point to.
Are you talking like generally who's been the biggest?
No, it could be kind of anybody. I mean, it's like someone that maybe has helped you along the way that nobody knows about, or it could be your dad, or it could be your grandfather. It could be just kind of anybody.
Yeah, it's so hard to point the finger at one person. I'd say I've had so much help in my career in terms of everything. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. Kind of like what I got back to being this racing family, so big and large. It's really true, and they've helped me out so much. But I'd really have to say my grandfather, especially in his last bit of time he had before he passed, and even when I was growing up. I mean, he was. My mom brought me out to the track originally, but when I really needed to, when I had an itch to go, and we hadn't been a while and whatever, I mean, he was always there to help me. And even the deal that we have now, and what almost got me to lights, and what will hopefully continue to push me to lights, is he would go to the racetracks, and he was a very personal person, as what I was talking about earlier, how important it is to be able to go up to someone and strike a conversation. And be remembered, like what you were talking about, is he did the same thing with the guys at Bilardi. I don't even think, knowing him, I don't think he met him once, but he went up there and I mean, they were his best friends, and to them, he might have seemed like some kooky old guy that was kind of just spitting random thoughts. During the race weekend in St. Petersburg in 2019, he was talking about having me in the car that was being raced that weekend for only a day. I mean, he was hustling these ideas with guys that were trying to be in the mindset of racing, but he was always hustling, and I think they appreciated that. And that's what originally got me that Indy Lights seat, was actually him, and a lot of those guys that were part of that Indy Lights program are a part of our program now. So that wouldn't have been done without him, but I'd just say his persona and what he taught me. I mean, it was, I don't think there's a person in the world, in the racing world or the world period, like him. He really lived the ideal life. He took chances when he needed to, and he really left with not a single dollar in his bank account, if that makes any sense. But
it does.
He lived 100%. He didn't leave anything on the table, and I think that's how I hopefully feel when I'm done. I don't know if I'll be close enough. Oh my God, the stories I have with him are, I don't know if you guys would believe him, but yeah, he was really just a great man, and he did so many great things for me and my dad and his family. I mean, he really is, he provided for us so well. And I think providing a home, which is our home now, and really just providing the idea and really what it means to live a happy and full life. So I'd have to give that to him.
That's awesome. That's great. And you talked about your mom, and we talked about this in our pilot episode. And I said to Aaron, the mothers of this sport, the mothers of the drivers, man, I don't know where the sport would be without mothers. I mean, the mothers really are the, in so many ways, the backbone. Like, even behind the scenes, have the moms pushing the fathers, kind of like you're talking about. And I've seen it a bunch. So I think that's a great comment too. And I think that's so awesome what you say about your grandfather. That's really cool.
Yeah. No, my mom equals him, I'd say, in terms of how much we've gotten done. Because while he did those side of the deals, she was kind of the back end getting those things figured out. So they're really quite equal in that aspect. So yeah, no, you're totally right. Totally right.
And I remember I was at 24 Hours of Daytona a couple years ago. I think it was 3 years ago. And I remember seeing your grandfather just walking around. I was really surprised to see him there. So I think that really speaks for, really his passion with the sport and just wanting to be around it. Because I feel like I saw him at a lot of different races just randomly there.
He was always around. And if you didn't see him around and you saw anyone on the phone, I can guarantee you they were talking to my grandfather about some sort of hypothetical racing deal.
Right.
I mean, we in the last few years he was around, we lived we all lived together in the hotel, and it was rare that I went into his apartment and didn't see him on the phone talking racing, or whenever we talked, we always talked racing. So he truly lived and breathed it. I don't think I will ever meet someone that lived and breathed racing more than he did.
That's really cool. That's awesome. Well, Aaron, are we putting round two in the books here? We putting this podcast in the books?
Yep. We'll definitely appreciate you coming on, Flynn. Thanks for kind of the last minute notice with the time zone.
Yeah, sorry about
easy.
that.
Oh no.
Hey, before
you've been traveling around the country, so
before we get off here, I want to give you a chance we want to give you a chance. Pump up your sponsors, man.
Metalloid, I gotta say thanks, Metalloid, for helping us with our previous endeavors. Will Marotti and the whole Legacy group. Bell Helmet's always been really great to me, helping us up. Shout out to Packy Wheeler, best guy. They make the best helmets. Period. They just do. So, but yeah, no, my family as well. They've always supported me, kind of like what I just said. So, thank you guys so much for having me on. Apologize for almost missing
you're good.
time. So,
Flynn, I wouldn't have it any other way. If any of us were on time, it just ain't gonna be right. I mean,
yeah,
I was nearly late myself, so do not apologize.
Okay, cool. Yeah, racers and punctuality. I don't know what it is.
Some are, a lot aren't. You were talking about sleeping all day. Now you probably get up and work out and do all that kind of stuff. A lot of the racers I know, they just sleep all day, so they never work out.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
Aaron,
no problem.
Hey, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure meeting you, and very kind of you taking some time out and speak with us. And man, we wish you nothing but luck and success.
Yeah, definitely hope to see you in the Indy 500, hopefully in a few years.
Yeah, me as well. I hope to see you guys there. And Aaron, I believe I still have your shirts. If we make it to May, I will bring it to the Speedway, and
cool.
If we can get some media there,
that'd be awesome. Thanks.
I'll make sure to send it your way.
Maybe David, if you ever help us out. But yeah, if you ever need ideas of doing any kind of merch or whatever, I'm your guy.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. All right. Well, thanks again, Flynn. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, sir. Have a great night, guys.